Hi, and welcome back to Willie Farms Homestead. I'm Cathy, and we're certainly glad you came today. I would like to share an old family recipe called smokehouse pickles with you today. This recipe was handed down to me from my aunt, Margaret Beatles. It's a fermented pickle with a strong crunch and a sweet flavor. Everyone loves it, especially if you love sweet pickles. This is a large batch pickle, and we believe this recipe was used to store pickles for long periods of time, for an entire family, probably for a year. And they kept them, more than likely, in their smokehouse in stone crocks, which is why we think they call it smokehouse pickles. This particular recipe calls for approximately 16 pounds of cucumbers. Now you can adjust it to your family size. If you don't need as many, you can reduce it some. If you need more, you could always either add to it or make a second batch like I usually do. We do our pickles in a 5-gallon food grade bucket with a lid. We usually use the gamma lid. We like that because you can unscrew it easier than you can try to pry it off. But the first thing you have to do is take your cucumbers and wash them real good and leave them whole. Then you put them in your bucket and you mix up your brine. Wash the pickles really good. Get any dirt, any ends off of them. Make sure they're good and firm. We like to pick the smaller ones because they usually make a better crunch. If you let them get too big, then you can always cut them and make cinnamon pickles out of them. And if we have those, then I will get the recipe and we'll try to make a batch of those this year. Make sure they're good and firm and not smushed. I have gotten some that were a little bit too soft and they don't crunch up quite as good. Now that we've got all our cucumbers washed, we're going to put them all in the bucket whole. We don't cut them up yet, we wait. And then we're going to make some brine water to pour over it so that they can soak for 14 days, and that's what really gives them the real sharp crispness. So here we go. All different sizes. Some are a little bigger than others. Some are a little smaller than others. Some we may have to watch out for when we get ready to do them because I don't know what happened there, unless that was maybe it was in the refrigerator just a little too long. But they all feel good and firm. I personally do not cut the ends off because that is not, it says in my recipe not to cut the ends off. Now some people do, and that's fine if that's how they do theirs, but all I know is that this is what Aunt Margaret said, and that's what I do. And she was a really good cook, so I'm going to follow her directions. Now that we have all of our cucumbers in our 5-gallon bucket, so now we're going to make the brine. We're on city water. We really don't want the chlorine in there to affect the pickles, so we're going to use a gallon of distilled water. We're also going to use Redmond's real salt. So what we do is we take 2 cups of the salt, and we're going to put it in this container with a gallon of water. We'll stir it up, make sure it's stirred up real good, and then we're going to put an egg in there and see if it floats. When your egg floats, then you know you have the correct brine mix. So then you pour it over your cucumbers and you cover the cucumbers, and then you may have to weight it down. I always weight it down with a plate, and then you let it set for 14 days. During the 14-day period, you need to check your cucumbers. If there is some scum floating, you just rake it off and throw it away, and that does happen occasionally. I've been stirring for a few minutes now, and I think it's stirred up good, but here's the test. We're going to try it and see. Well, the egg is floating, so I guess we're good. We've got our brine, so we're going to take this out. As you can see, it's not floating in just plain water. So it does, the salt water does cause it to float. And we're going to pour this over our pickles. Okay. We did the one batch of brine. It wasn't quite enough to cover the pickles, so we're going to do another one. We've already got it mixed up and stirred up. We've already checked it to see if the egg would float. So now we're going to pour this in. We've got to have enough to cover it with. Alright, now, in order to get it down in the brine, now we're going to have to get a plate so we can weight it down. And put it down there. Gotta put something on it to weight it down. Put the water out because, as you can see, it is very full. But we need to make sure that we put I put a bowl in there to help keep it weighted down so they make sure they're all inside the water. So now let's see if this works. It's called, we just have to do it. All right, we're going to try this again. Take two, because the first time I put the lid on correctly, it spewed water all over the floor. So we're going to try it again. Turn the plate right side up. Right side up. Okay, now. There we go. Now, I don't think I've ever made them with the gamma lids on before. I think every other time it just had a straight flat lid. So I think that was what my problem was. Okay, we have accomplished step one. That is to wash the cucumbers and to fix the brine water, put them in the 5-gallon bucket, and weight them down so they stay under. So now what I do, so I don't forget, I always write on a sticky note, I'll say brine, and I'll put today's date, which is August the 17th, 24, and then I just stick it on my bucket. And in 14 days, when we start the next process, then I write down, so I make sure that I've waited 24 hours for each process, because once this starts, you have to be ready with all of your ingredients that you need. You put them in brine for 14 days, and then after that, you do a step, 24 hours, you do a step, 24 hours, you do another step, and then you just wait until they soak up all the sugary goodness. So this is how you get started with smokehouse pickles. Today we're going to do the second step of our smokehouse pickles. We've let them set for 14 days, and today being the 15th day, we will take them out of the bucket. We'll rinse them off real well. Then we're going to cut them in medium-sized chunks, and then we'll put them back in the bucket and cover them up with alum and water and let them set for 24 hours. So we're going to undo the top. Okay, so they've set for 14 days in brine water. They are going to be fairly soft. Some of them are more soft than others. Anything that you think is too soft, we will get rid of. We've still got several pickles in there. I do like them to be firmer. This one feels a little too squishy. So we'll just go through each one of them as we wash them. Some will explode if they're too soft. You know they're no good. Then we set them to the side, and then we'll cut the rest of these up into little chunks. As you can see, some of them are not as firm as others. This one is pretty rough. This one just totally exploded, so it will be no good whatsoever. So we will gently pick them up and wash them off real good. I'm going to put them in. I'm not going to put them over there. That one's kind of falling apart. It may not be much good. So now we're going to dump our alum in. It was 2.5 ounces of alum. And we're going to add water and mix it, stir it real good so that when we cut the cucumbers up, then we can just go ahead and put them in and make sure. So we want to make sure we get the alum mixed in real good, and then we're going to cut the cucumbers and put them in, and we'll finish filling with water. I'm going to go ahead and put 1.5 gallons of water in. A 1.5 gallons of distilled water in with our 2.5 ounces of alum. Make sure it's mixed up real good. And now we're going to cut them up in chunks. I usually just cut off the end. I'm not crazy about that end piece. It's close to the same size as possible. And not your finger. And some of them may not be good. You may have to throw them out. You just cut them and save the best parts that you can. You can cut them smaller than that. I've got them in slices. You can cut them in big chunks if you want, like quarters. The slices up, just however you want to cut them. Okay, now we've got all our pickles cut up into small chunks, and we've got them in our alum water. And we soak this for 24 hours. We're going to weight it down again to make sure that they all get in the water. Okay, now that we've got the pickles in the alum water mixture, and we've got them weighted down with the plate again and the lid on good and tight, we're going to wait 24 hours, and then we're going to rinse them really well. Alum makes pickles crisp by coagulating small particles, and some experts say you don't need alum anymore in your pickles, but we've been using this recipe for generations. As long as you rinse them off well, I think it will be okay, but you decide on your own. When you're mixing up your alum water, be sure and don't inhale the powder because it could possibly cause you some issues. The 24-hour cycle, we're going to rinse it really, really well so there won't be any alum left on our pickles, and I think we should be safe. And now it's time to do step 3. We're going to take the cucumbers out. We're going to rinse them off real well, get all the alum off of them, and then we're going to put them back in the bucket, and we're going to cover them with vinegar for 24 hours. And make sure you use 5% acidity vinegar. We're going to be using white vinegar in ours, and we're going to make sure it's 5% acidity. You can use apple cider vinegar if you'd like to. So tonight is step 4, the last step in our smokehouse pickles. We're going to drain the vinegar off, and then we're going to add 10 pounds of sugar. The recipe calls for a box of pickling spice. It doesn't say exactly what size. So the process will be, once the vinegar is drained off, we're going to get all the pickles out of the bucket. We then put our pickling spice inside our cheesecloth. We tie it up with a string and we stick it down in the middle of it. And then we set and wait 2 to 3 weeks, and they should be good to go then. So let's get started draining the vinegar off. So now we're going to complete the process of putting the pickles in. We do a few at a time. We'll put a layer of pickles in, we'll put a layer of sugar. Then we'll put another layer of pickles and another layer of sugar. And we do that until all the sugar's gone. And then we're just going to sprinkle some sugar over it. Cover them pretty good. We'll put a few more in. There's a little vinegar left in there. And another layer of sugar. I know this looks like a lot of sugar. That's what the recipe calls for. And I can tell you they are very good sweet pickles. I have several people that want them. I have some friends at work. Oops, I still got a lot of sugar left. That will actually claim them when I bring them in. These are mine.
Did you put the thing in there now?
This is all that's left, so dig a spot out in a minute. Pour the rest of the bag over it. So I always want to make sure I get enough on the top, so I usually wind up having a little more left over on the top. Once this sugar sets for a while, the vinegar that was left on the cucumbers, it will dissolve and it'll make its own syrup after the sugar dissolves. Now then, we're going to put our pickling spice in the cheesecloth. Maybe a little bit more. Oops. And then we're going to tie it up. Tie it one more time, just to make sure it stays tight. Okay, now we're going to dig a little hole out in the middle here. It's already starting to get some juice going. Now we put the lid back on. So tonight we've completed step 4 in our smokehouse pickles. We've drained the vinegar off. We put them back in the bucket. We put the sugar, the layer of cucumbers and the layer of sugar, and we put our pickling spices in. Now we're going to wait 2-3 weeks, and then the sugar will melt and it'll make the syrup, which makes it very sweet pickles.
Hello. Now it is time to test our pickles. It's been how long?
In a couple of weeks now.
Okay. Pickles have sat in there a couple of weeks. It's time to try them. They smell good. All right, get us a couple of good ones out of there.
Oops, I lost them. Slippery tongues.
All right, a couple of pickles here. All right, you ready? Bon appetit.
Bon appetit.
Oh, what a crunch.
They're very crunchy.
Wow, that's wonderful.
Very sweet.
Yes, very good sweet pickle. Smokehouse pickles. Y'all need to try these. I'm not kidding. Best pickle ever. Good.
Yep, they are. Thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed this. And if you make these pickles, I hope you enjoy them as much as my family does. I have family and friends who fight over them sometimes. Bye, and God bless.
All right, now you can do it all over again. I'll hit record now.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
You didn't record none of that?